Hello and welcome to the Honor and Knowledge channel with a Hungry Strike for America and 2026 election update for Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. A lot of things happening recently just causing me to reinvigorate my desire to ensure that the Republicans maintain a House majority and increase their majority in the Senate in 2026. Some of the things that have been happening that we've been finding out about are worse, much worse than what President Nixon got in trouble for the Watergate cover-up and Watergate itself. The spying on senators and congressmen and other people in the United States of America by the FBI for 10 years now is terrible. It appears that President Obama initiated the actions necessary to support the Russian hoax being used to significantly impact President Trump. That one is also terrible, much worse than anything that President Nixon did. And there's all kinds of other things that make me really angry now at the Democrats. The ineptocrats, by the way, that's a real word, are doing their death rattle. They're about ready to die as a party. You know, if you read your history, the Democrat Party was pro-slavery, anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish. After the Civil War, they were Ku Klux Klan. I believe they've been around long enough. Probably turned into 3 or 4 parties. One, the Democrat Socialist Party, i.e. communists. Number 2 is the moderate Democrats, of which there's 3 in the Senate that we know about, and one's actually an independent, Senator King. The ones that have voted to end the shutdown, those 3 would be the moderate Democrats. Maybe they're Republicans, but they just haven't said that yet. I know that Senator Fetterman in an interview stated that there was no way he was ever going to become a Republican, but that just seems like a challenge to me. I think it'd be easier for him to become a Republican than we thought it would be for him to be a real senator. Remember that? And then there's going to be in between the moderate Democrats, i.e. Republicans, and the Democrat Socialists, i.e. communists. The Democrat Socialists could also be called the gimme group. You know, give me everything for free. Don't know where it comes from, but I don't care. Just give it to me for free, and I'll vote for you. And I haven't come up with a name yet between the moderate Democrats and the Democrat Socialist / communist / gimme group. Give me comments if you want to. Now then, with regard to the Hungry Strike for America, I had some challenges this week. Seems like I overcame them because, as you can see from the official Hungry Strike for America sign, there are 2 stars there. Started a whole new line for them. And at the end of this video, I'll provide information with regard to what my challenges were, if that's of interest to you, and how I overcame them, trying to fight to get 1 pound loss and ended up with 2. And because we added 2 stars to the Hungry Strike for America official sign, I got to fill in red on 2 states, the number 11 and number 12, based upon who voted the most percentile-wise for President Trump in the 2024 elections. And number 11 position is Mississippi. Known well to me because I was born there. Not known that well to me because my parents took me and my older brother and we went to Alaska at the age of 6 months. Yep, Alaska. My father was in the Air Force, so I was born at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. Speaking of the Air Force, the senior senator from Mississippi, Senator Roger Wicker, is a retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Air Force. He also happens to be the chairman of the Senate Armed Forces Committee. Pretty important position. He is not up for re-election next year. The other senator from Mississippi is Senator Cindy Hyde Smith. That's a hyphenated last name. She is up for re-election in 2026. She is considered to be and considers herself to be a conservative Republican. I would not expect her to have any problems in 2026. Mississippi has 4 House districts. 3 heavily lean Republican and 1 heavily leans Democrat. Yes, if they did redistrict, there'd be 4 House districts for the Republicans, but there are no plans to do that right now. But there is actually a redistricting case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court right now from Mississippi. That one deals with state legislature boundaries. There's also another one dealing with Supreme Court districts. They vote for the Supreme Court by districts in Mississippi. And that one is in front of a court of appeals. Those are all on hold pending the result of the Supreme Court hearing. Congressman Trent Kelly is a retired Major General from the Army, a decorated war hero with 2 Bronze Stars and other decorations. He was also on the playing field when Scalise got shot in 2017. In fact, Trent Kelly was the first person to get shot at. He just wasn't hit. he warned everybody else. Congressman Michael Guest is currently the chairman of the House Ethics Committee. To me, that means that his colleagues hold him in high esteem. And the third and last Republican congressman from Mississippi is Congressman Mike Ezell. This guy has a great and interesting background. He got his degree going to night school. He was law enforcement. He was a police officer, and he became the sheriff of Jackson County, which is where Pascagoula is. Congressman Benny Thompson is the single House Democrat from Mississippi. He appears to me to be a wonderful man, but I also think he's way too liberal for our country. That means I really hope that Mississippi redistricts after the Supreme Court hearing is concluded. That assumes, of course, that the Supreme Court agrees that racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional. In number 12 position is the great state of Louisiana. Now, I was thinking that that one would be one that I would talk about next Wednesday, which would be appropriate because coincidentally, that's the date that the Supreme Court is going to be talking about the Louisiana versus Calais gerrymandering House redistricting Supreme Court case. But I lost 2 pounds last week, so we get to talk about Louisiana. Here you go. Senator Bill Cassidy is the senior senator from Louisiana. He's a gastroenterologist, and he is, I guess I would say, a moderate Republican. He has to run for re-election in 2026, and interestingly, he and President Trump do not see eye to eye on everything, so this one will be fun to watch. Speaking of fun, Senator Kennedy, the junior senator from Louisiana, happened to be born in Mississippi, but he was raised in Louisiana. Amongst other things, he went to Oxford University for an advanced law degree. He was initially a Democrat and got state office as a Democrat. Then he switched to Republican, and he is up for re-election not in 2026, but in 2028. He has always been and is currently a fiscal hawk. I love this guy. Louisiana has 6 House districts. 2 of those House districts were purposely drawn to allow blacks to be represented in Congress. However, that was done in accordance with the Voting Rights Act, and yet some people believe that the Voting Rights Act itself is unconstitutional. That's what's in front of the Supreme Court right now. So after the Supreme Court makes a decision on that case, Louisiana may be redistricting and redrawing their lines. The most prominent of the 4 House Republicans from Louisiana is Speaker Mike Johnson. I believe he has the superpower of remaining calm. He also has the superpower of having fantastic stamina, seeing how much time he spends on all the different shows on television and cable news. Mr. Steve Scalise is the House Majority Leader. Yep, because Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House, then the Republicans have their own separate leader. In this case, Steve Scalise, who, remember, was almost killed in 2017 and underwent many operations and many months of recovery. Another wonderful, wonderful person. Congressman Clay Higgins is quite outside the norm for a politician. He is, let's just say, very pro-Trump and very conservative Republican member of the House. Julia Letlow is the 4th Republican in the House from Louisiana. To go back a little bit, in 2012, before she was elected to Congress, she completed her PhD, and her dissertation was on the subject of grief and how a family copes with it. It was dedicated to her brother Jeremy, who had been killed in a car accident. In 2020, in December, after winning election to the Congress, her husband, Luke Letlow, died of COVID-19. Julia Letlow ran in the special election to replace him, and she won. She also had former President Trump's endorsement. She is a solid Republican in the House. Congressman Troy Carter is the first of 2 Democrats from Louisiana. He appears to be a 100% Democrat, voting 100% of the time in favor of whatever President Biden wanted. Having said that, he does seem to be a very good person, and the best thing is his wife is a Army Reserve Brigadier General. So, other than being a Democrat, a great guy. Congressman Cleo Fields is the other Democrat in the House from Louisiana. For him, the problem is the Supreme Court case. That is his district that is the subject of the hearing on October 15th with the Supreme Court. So obviously, he'll be following that just as much as we will. Now then, Fulton County. I mentioned last week that I'd reached out and I hadn't gotten a response yet. I tried a different path to reach out and was successful. So I had an off-the-record discussion with a person who will remain nameless because I didn't ask to use their name. I forgot to do that because I'm not an expert journalist, but I did say it was off the record. You can't use a person's name in that case unless they agree. So I did get information that allowed me to point myself in different directions to get additional information, and it is tremendous. There is a lot of activity going on now with regard to Fulton County, Georgia elections. So let's sort of set the table for this discussion by going back to 2020. Remember when President Trump did not win his re-election, President Biden won, and the Democrat control of the House and Senate were big deals also. So Senator Ossoff was one of the two senators that won for the Democrats in Georgia. His special election was in January of 2021. Why that? Because the way Georgia does elections, it was too close to call in the 2020 election itself. So he and Governor Perdue, who was basically very well known in Georgia and the favorite as far as I remember, went head-to-head in January, and Senator Ossoff won. He won by less than 55,000 votes across all of Georgia. That gave the Democrats the control of the Senate. And recently, the state of Georgia commenced the operation to remove 480,000 voters from the rolls that shouldn't be on the rolls for voting. So a lot of shenanigans went on in 2020 in the Fulton County world of elections. We've discussed some of them in previous videos. This is a wonderful article here, just from September 27th, that actually summarizes some of those shenanigans. For example, it appears there's like 100,000 votes just in Fulton County that can't be verified anymore. And there was an order by the election board there in the October time frame, just before the election, to get 770,210 ballots delivered, but not properly documented ballots, just ballots. And as you can see from the title of the article, the Georgia State Election Board is subpoenaing, whatever that word is trying to get all the evidence from the election board, but they're having tremendous difficulty. The election board in Fulton County is dragging its feet. And enter the federal government. Here's a letter from the Department of Justice to the state of Georgia regarding, and I'll quote from the second paragraph, to immediately access the approximately 148,000 absentee ballots and envelopes currently being held at the Fulton County Ballot Warehouse. I am at present undertaking an investigation into election integrity here at the Department of Justice. A review of the ballots and envelopes is imperative for this work. So it is not just Fulton County, Georgia that's being looked at by the DOJ, but that's a big area that is going to be looked at. That subject actually came up very recently in a hearing where Attorney General Bondi was being questioned by Senator Hirono from Hawaii.
Blue states are sued to get highly sensitive private voter data, whereas red states are left alone. The double standard is clear.
Obviously, you can see that the Democrats are not happy about having any potential shenanigans in the voting world identified, especially those from 2020. But as you and I both know, if we don't figure out what went wrong, then we can't really fix it. So looking backwards in 2020, that's a pretty complicated thing to do. But just as complicated is what's going on right now today. So let's do it through the numbers. Number one, there's an election board in Fulton County which is supposed to have members of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party on it. Number two, those election board members get appointed by the Fulton County Commissioners. Number three, the Fulton County Commission is mainly Democrats. Number four, the Republicans have provided 2 additional candidates to be put on the election board that are supposed to be approved by the commissioners. Number five, the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, Democrat-controlled, have refused to appoint the Republican candidates onto the election board. Both Republican candidates are people that actually understand what went on in 2020, certain that there were shenanigans. The Democrat commissioners don't want to put them on the election board. Number 6, there's a state law in Georgia that says that if a party has people they want to put on the election board, and they're one of the 2 major parties in Georgia, which the Republicans are, then the commissioners are required by law to appoint them to the election board. Number 7, because the election board has not had their new members put onto it, the Fulton County Republican Party has sued the Fulton County commissioners. Number 8, the Republicans won in court, and the judge said that there will be a $10,000 a day fine until the Fulton County commissioners put the Republicans on the election board that they were supposed to add. Right now, there's only 1 election board member who's a Republican. I'm losing the numbers. Next, the commissioners said, we're going to appeal this. And the judge said, okay, he is required by Georgia law to stay to stop any fines being accrued if the other party, in this case the commissioners, say they're going to appeal. So he did what he is required to do by state law. The Republicans then went to the Georgia Court of Appeals, where you would be expecting the judge's decision to be appealed. And they requested that the Georgia Court of Appeals go ahead and expedite the hearing on the commissioners trying to appeal it. Here's what the result was. The Georgia Court of Appeals denied it. And the reason why they denied it was because there was no appeal yet put in, no appeal yet submitted by the Democrat commissioners from Fulton County. But aha, there was something that did get done. The Fulton County commissioners went to the Georgia Supreme Court. They bypassed the Georgia Court of Appeals and went straight to the Georgia Supreme Court. Why did they do that? Well, my belief is that they did that because they knew that they were going to lose right away in the Georgia Court of Appeals. I actually said that last week. So they bypassed the Georgia Court of Appeals and went to the Supreme Court. Why did they do that instead? Well, guess what? The Supreme Court's not looking at this until January of next year. And how long does it take for the Supreme Court to come up with a decision after that? Well, you and I both know it'll probably be months. So all this time, the election board in Fulton County does not have the proper number of Republican members. Any authorities in Georgia need to get involved with this to require that the Fulton County commissioners get the Republicans onto the election board, or stop all activities going on by the election board in Fulton County. And if that means they don't hold elections, so be it, because I'd rather not hold elections than hold, how can I say this properly, hold elections which are not valid. This is a big, big deal. A lot more is going to follow on this one. I'm not going to say it's the worst thing going on in our country with regard to election, but I will say that it's equal to probably anything else that's bad. Remember, Senator Ossoff is up for re-election in 2026. It's a good time for us to get that Senate seat for the Republicans. Now let's talk redistricting. First, California. Early voting has started in California, and we all know that this will pass and California will be redistricted. Now, Utah.
Now, today, the Utah legislature met in a special session. Lawmakers voted on a new congressional map for the hotly contested midterm elections. But tonight, a new lawsuit to challenge that new map, and the governor signing the first bill of the special session. Utah is set to have a new congressional map for 2026. Lawmakers approved that map, option C, after an all-day special session today. Republicans are hoping to begin to close the book on the legal battle over these maps, but Democrats, they warned that a new law passed today could extend it and that this isn't over.
So that looks like Utah has redistricted and Republicans will keep all 4 seats, but there's more lawsuits. And a new one in the fray, New Hampshire. Remember Corey Lewandowski, a sometime Trump administrative person, and he has roots in New Hampshire. As this article indicates, he is, quote, flirting, unquote, with running for governor in New Hampshire. And the reason for that? Because the current governor is not supporting redistricting right now. So, more to follow on this, maybe. And remember, the Supreme Court hearing on October 15th will result in something over the next few months that will be important for purposes of Florida as well as other states on their redistricting. In the videos over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've spoken about the New Jersey race only because of my Naval Academy background, and the Democrat candidate has issues with regard to that. I have nothing new to discuss on that, so as far as I'm concerned, New Jersey race will be important when we know who actually wins it, just like the Virginia race. And speaking of Virginia, the Attorney General candidate for the Democrats, the one that discussed those terrible things with regard to how to deal with the Republican Speaker of the Virginia legislature.
Responses coming from both sides of the aisle for those comments made by Jay Jones, but only one side calling for his resignation. Again, this goes back to a report from the National Review that back in 2022, Jay Jones, who is no longer a delegate, texted a Republican delegate, Kerry Coyner, and said he would put 2 bullets to the head of former Republican House Speaker Todd Gilbert, and then wished harm on Gilbert's kids in a follow-up phone call with her. Jones initially only said he regretted the texts and that this was a smear campaign from his opponent, but later put out a longer statement on Friday apologizing to Gilbert and his family. He also said he would work to prove to Virginians that he'll fight for them as Attorney General, indicating he's staying in the race. But that is exactly what Republican lawmakers have said he shouldn't do and have called for him to resign. This includes President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and his opponent, current Attorney General Jason Miyares, who held a press conference on Saturday and said he doesn't accept Jones's apology because of when he made it.
Jay Jones regrets it only after it has endangered his campaign.
You know, it's amazing to me that we no longer have any sense of decency or accountability in the Democrat ineptocrat party. They just don't understand how to be human beings, and they especially don't understand how to be Americans. So onward. Tennessee and the Trump-endorsed Matt Van Epps won the GOP primary, and the election is in December. So, about my Hungry Strike for America weight loss journey challenges this week. Warning, this next part is just about me losing weight. Last week, as you recall, I didn't lose a pound. My wife came across a sale for chicken wings at a good store, good chicken wings. So we had some on Saturday night. I attempted to control myself. Didn't eat as many of those that I really wanted to. And then we had gone to IKEA on Saturday and got the sauce for the Swedish meatballs that had already been put in the freezer from the previous visit to IKEA. No, we don't go that often to IKEA, but my wife is looking for the special pieces of furniture for a special spot. So we ended up buying the sauce for the Swedish meatballs, ended up having Swedish meatballs on Sunday night. I controlled myself again, had a lot less than I really wanted, but I was up by 6.5 pounds on Monday morning from all the sodium and the water weight and the calories. So I cut back a lot, was very hungry on Monday, but on Tuesday morning when I weighed myself, I was still up by 5.5 pounds. I had to lose 5.5 pounds in order to say I had lost 1 pound this week. So I was 4.5 pounds heavier than the previous Wednesday morning. So I only had 3 types of nutrition on Tuesday. I really cut back. Basically went on a hunger strike for a day. Hunger strike for America. I don't advocate, but I am seriously thinking about doing this more often. I only had 2 cups of coffee with Splenda and half and half, about a tablespoon and a half of half and half. Here's the size of the cup, so it's not a big mug. Then the other 2 things were a small piece of chocolate, dark chocolate. My wife gives me a piece almost every day. She's decided that's medicinal. And also, as a treat, at nighttime she has some cookies, 20 calories a piece, cookies with her tea that she takes before she goes to bed. So I got 1 cookie, 20 calories. And on Wednesday morning, I had not only lost because I was getting rid of all the sodium and the water weight throughout the course of Tuesday and Tuesday night, Wednesday morning I was actually down by 2 pounds from the previous Wednesday. Therefore, the 2 stars and the 2 states. The 2 states of Mississippi and Louisiana. So that was my challenge this week and how I overcame it. By the way, I also work out 3 times a week at home. I do therapy 2 to 3 times a week besides that at home. If you guys are interested, if anyone comments about it, I'll spend some time providing information with regard to how I do my workouts and my therapy. So having said all that, if you have any questions, give me some comments. Thank you very much for your time, the most precious thing you have. I don't need your money, just your time, your interest, your support by watching this. If you want to like it, you want to subscribe, want to comment, that's all great also. God bless you. God bless President Trump and his administration. God bless the United States of America. See you next week.